The Deck of Life. Written and narrated by RJF. A man walks into a bar on a brisk summer's night. He is troubled by the weight of life and needs a drink or two to help take the edge off. He makes his way to the bartender and asks for a drink. Upon receiving it moments later, he sighs in deep frustration and sorrow. "Something the matter?" the bartender inquires. The man sighs again. "My dad's passed away." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." The bartender sympathizes. "My condolences." "Thank you." The man thoughtfully caresses his glass with his hands. "I hate to speak ill of him, but the old man had a lot of debts, you see, and now it seems I've inherited them. Trouble is, the wife and I, we can't afford to pay them off. We're pregnant, expecting in a day now, and babies are expensive. We just don't have the money." The man gulps down the rest of his drink and asks the bartender for a refill. As the bartender complies, he says, "You know, I hate to see people in troubled times, especially if I can do something about it. That's how my folks brought me up. So I'll tell you what, not only am I going to give you your drinks on the house, but I'll also give you this." Along with the man's refill, the bartender also hands him quite a large sum of cash. The man is shocked. "Oh, no, I can't possibly. Please, I insist. You need it more than I do." The man smiles and makes certain that his second drink is his last, perhaps as a way of not taking advantage of the bartender's generosity, or perhaps he no longer desires the drink's numbing effects. The man cannot leave the bar without inquiring whether the bartender is sure of his decision. After all, it is quite a lot of money. "If I weren't sure, I wouldn't have done it," is the bartender's response. The man leaves with one final thank you, and the bartender goes about his usual business. At closing time, he scrubs the counters, locks up, and heads home for the night. When he arrives and walks in through the front door, he is greeted from the kitchen by his wife. But her greeting is far from enthusiastic. She has problems of her own. "The water bill's in," she says, looking at the bill in her hand and carefully stroking back her hair. "How bad?" her husband asks. "Higher than last time." "Damn thieves they are," he says, rubbing his chin. "I was thinking we might use the tip you got a couple weeks back to pay it off." The man scratches his head. "Actually, I don't have that anymore." "What?" the woman says sharply. "What do you mean? What'd you do with it?" "Gave it away. To a customer at the bar." "You what?" "It was for a good reason," he protests. She raises her eyebrows. "Let me guess. The customer needed it more than we did." "Well, he did." "Dan, you can't keep doing this," the woman pleads. "We can't afford to..."
"Can't afford to what? Help others?"
The man's hands tighten into trembling fists at his side. "Look, I'm not telling you to..."
"I don't want to hear it. If someone needs my help, then I'm going to help them. No questions asked."
"At our expense."
"We can get by."
"I don't know if..."
"I said we can get by."
The man points his finger angrily.
"You may have a selfish attitude towards this, but I certainly don't."
"It's not selfish if..."
"It is selfish. I won't stand by while someone needs my help. That's not how I was raised."
"If you would just shut up for 2 seconds and let me speak, you'd know that we can't afford anything because I've been laid off." There is silence. The man squints at her. "What did you say?" She sighs. "I lost my job. We can't afford to pay our bills like this. We're already going into debt, and you're going around giving away money like you're the richest person in the world. You're on about other people's needs, but what about our needs?" The woman sits at the kitchen table and rests her head in her hands. The man wipes his forehead.
"I stand by what I did."
"You would," she responds coldly. "You can't be responsible for the whole world, Dan."
"You can, if you cared enough to try."
After this, the man departs for an evening walk. He needs to clear his head. Rest assured, both he and his wife are going over the argument ad nauseum in their heads. However, the man maintains that he has done nothing wrong, and that he was entirely in the right. How could he have been wrong? He helped out a person who was down on their luck. Who cares if it was at his own expense? He'll manage. The deepness of the man's thoughts and the blackness of the night sky are perhaps blinding to him, because the man walks through a part of town that no one should ever find themselves in. Colloquially, this part of town is known as Thieves' Land. One can only imagine how a name like that could have developed. The man's ears perk up when he thinks he hears something. Help me! There it is again. The man rushes toward the sound and discovers an older lad, backed up against a wall by 3 leather-clad women. How much you got, Gramps? One of the women says. Please, the older man says. My daughter. She's in hospital, sick. I need this money for her. Oh, but maybe I have a sick daughter too, Gramps, another woman mocks. Maybe I need the money to help her. Despite his pleas, the women try to take his money by force, and when the man resists, they beat him. He curls up on the floor as they continually kick him. Stop this, the bartender yells. One of the women stops and looks at him while the others continue to beat the older man. What did you say? I said stop this. I'm not going to stand here and let you lot beat that poor man. Really? The woman inquires falsely. And what are you going to do about it? The bartender responds with a right hook to her face. He doesn't foresee his way with words being very useful here, and the element of surprise will perhaps catch them off guard long enough to get the older man away from them. This assumption, however, is entirely incorrect. The offhand attack does nothing less than set the woman off. She pummels the man to the ground before he can even consider throwing a second punch. She shakes his blood off her knuckles and grunts. Neither man can move. Both older lad and younger bartender are stripped of their dignity. But the bartender won't be silenced. His upbringing won't allow it. As the women take the older man's money and walk away, he yells, Come back here! I'm not finished with you! One of the women retrieves a gun from her pocket and loads it. My God, shut up! She pulls the trigger and shoots the bartender in the chest. She shoots the older lad too, but the bartender will never realize this. He is trembling. The blood oozing from his chest caresses his hands as he tries to put pressure on his wound. But he can't stop what started. He is cold, blind, alone. Soon he will no longer feel and no longer hear. One by one his senses switch off until his life flickers out. The man wakes to a world of red, a world of fire. Before him sits a fiery red being on a flaming golden throne. What the? Where am I? The man splutters, scrambling to his feet. I think you know where you are, the being says, in a deep and composed voice. As the being's lips move to speak, melted flesh drips from them. I assure you, I haven't a clue where I am or how I got here, the man protests. The fiery being lets out an uneasy groan, standing from the throne and approaching the man. Must I spell it out for you? The being says, and they follow this up with a wave of their hand, allowing fiery words to float in the air. They spell the underworld. The underworld, the man repeats dubiously. Don't be ridiculous. Where am I, really? You are where the dead gather when something in their life has been left unresolved. Whatever you wish to call it does not concern me. The being circles the bartender, and the smiling, molten face makes the bartender hesitate. What are you going to do with me? He asks. No, my friend. The question is, what am I going to do for you? I don't understand. The man does not once look the being in the eye. He looks at the melting mouth, the bulging biceps, the horrendous horns, but never the eyes. He is too afraid.
Hitherto, you have done great work in your life,
the being says.
You've helped a great many people in need.
Why would you care about that? The man raises a brow. Aren't you meant to be the devil or something?
Did I say that?
It's quite obvious. The being nods.
Careful of your assumptions.
The being chuckles deeply and continues.
It would be a shame to see your great work end here. That's why I'd like to offer you my services. I'd like to resurrect you so that you can continue your good work.
What's the catch? The man blurts. There is a small pause.
It's best not to concern yourself with such things.
No, you are going to tell me what you would get in return. The being glares at the man.
Excuse me.
I won't take any deal from you until I know the full extent of it. This time, the man does look the being dead in the eye.
I would advise heavily.
I couldn't care less what you'd advise. The fiery being smacks the man with such force that he falls to the ground with a red mark on his face.
How dare you speak over me?
The being booms.
You would do well to learn your place very quickly, lest my patience wear thin.
The being hoists the man in the air by the neck and continues.
Now, I suggest you take my offer. If you don't, I'll have to keep you here, and you shall suffer for all eternity. Do you know what that's like? Can your tiny mind even comprehend the endless torment that would befall you? Allow me to give you an inkling.
With a snap of the being's fingers, a fiery circle appears out of thin air. Then the man's head is dunked into it. He screams like he never has before, for he has never felt pain like this before. The literal fires of hell scorch his face. His flesh melts off his bones. He would have begged for mercy if his vocal cords hadn't already been burned to a crisp. Eventually, the being relieves the man of this horror and throws him aside, allowing him to hit the ground painfully.
Now, what have you to say with regards to my offer?
The being queries. With a trembling hand, the man feels his face. There is flesh, unburned skin. He is fine.
Please,
he begins.
Take me back. Resurrect me.
The fiery being grins and snaps their fingers. The man stands up off the ground, awakening to a bright, sunny day. He no longer feels pain. It is just another day like any other. The man looks around, brushes himself off, shrugs, and starts on his way back home. But it seems he has forgotten that he is still in the thieves' land, and thieves are everywhere. Case in point, a man walks up to the bartender and bumps into him. He apologizes and walks off, and it doesn't take long to realize that the bartender's wallet has been stolen by the passerby. "Hey, my wallet! Give me back my wallet!" he says. Or he tries to say, but no sound comes out. He tries again. Nothing. What is this? The man thinks. Why can't I speak? He is in so much shock that he doesn't even consider running after the thief, and so the thief gets away. Eventually, the bartender makes it back home and sits himself down at the kitchen table. His wife returns home soon afterward. "Dan, where were you last night?" she asks worriedly. "You didn't come home. I called around. I thought you might have slept at a friend's house, but no one knew where you were." The man says nothing, not because he has nothing to say, but because he cannot say. He cannot speak. "Oh, I see. Very mature," the wife dismisses. "Not talking to me. And to think I was actually worried about you." The man tries to make motions with his hands to communicate to his wife that, for some uncanny reason, he cannot speak. However, these motions are unintelligible. "What on earth are you doing?" she breathes. He is trying to make the simplest of gestures. He is pointing to his open mouth and shaking his head. Or so he thinks, but what he's really doing is aimlessly waving his hands around.
This is the devil's doing,
the man thinks.
This is the catch I wasn't told about. It must be.
The man has an idea. He runs into the other room. Where are you going? His wife says, exasperated. He returns with a piece of paper and a pen. Clutching the pen between his fingers, the man scribbles his message onto the paper. Nothing too complex, just simply, I can't speak. But when the finished message is presented to the woman, she cannot decipher it. Dan, I don't understand, she says. The man keeps writing, but his wife doesn't have time to decipher his scribbles. Dan, I have to go. I've got a job interview. Just sort yourself out by the time I get back. She leaves the house, and the man says nothing. He sits in silence for a few minutes, feeling his body tremor at the speed of his pounding heart. Then he frantically retrieves as much paper as he can find, sits down at the table, and continues to write. Gradually, he lowers the bar of acceptance. When he began, he would accept only a properly written sentence. Now, an identifiable letter would be good enough. Time ticks on, and the man is not satisfied. He can't speak, he can't write, he can't gesture. He has lost the ability to communicate with the world around him. This is the price he paid for resurrection. How can he work like this? How can he maintain his relationship with his wife? How can he keep himself from going insane? Every thought in his head can never be expressed again. He is alive, given a second chance at life, but is he really living? Can one live without the ability to communicate? Piles of crumpled paper surround the man. His hands tremble as he puts pen to a fresh sheet of paper. He intends to write only a single letter, an easy letter. I. It can be done with just a short vertical line, and it is such a powerful letter. Not just a letter, but a word unto itself, a pronoun, the word that refers to oneself, the word that allows the one to communicate with the many. But even this simple, powerful letter is unintelligible. The man throws the pen across the room and it shatters on the wall, staining it with ink. His hands tremble. He is now an observer, only able to watch. But he cannot express his thoughts. He cannot ever be understood. He is isolated. His life is becoming a torture. In a matter of hours, the man has lost all hope. He retrieves an item from the other room and then leaves the house. As for the item he retrieved, some consider it a weapon, others consider it a shield. But at this moment, as the man empties the item's contents, he considers it his only escape. Rest assured, the fiery being foresaw all of this. Apparently, this torture is their idea of fun. It's understandable, perhaps. If you were condemned to the underworld for all eternity, wouldn't you want to have a little fun? When the bartender arrives before the fiery being yet again, they smile and say only 2 words. These words are simple yet complex, hollow yet meaningful. What are these 2 words? Quite simply, they are a greeting. When the fiery being opens their mouth, they say just 2 powerful words.
Welcome back.
The end. This has been The Deck of Life, written and narrated by RJF.